Hey everyone, Doug here. Welcome to yet another board game channel where we will be starting yet another board game playthrough, and yes, I'm tackling Arkham Horror, the not card game. I'm not sure how wise this is, but we're going to go through it anyway. A few things before we go over the setup. I'm not going to teach people how to play this game. I'm not going to go over all the rules in super detail. Maybe things that are, setup dependent as they come up. There's all kinds of stuff out there where you can learn how to play this if you have no idea. I assume if you're watching the channel, you have some idea. Next, I'm actually going to be playing it not straight. I'm going to be doing the first scenario in a series of scenarios. We'll see if I do more of them. From a Board Game Geek user named Kung Fro. He came up with a whole bunch of thematically tweaked scenarios. Things like taking stuff out of the game that has to do with old ones you're not fighting, that sort of thing. I know there are other people on YouTube who have been doing a few of these. Cat Weasel has been working his way through it the last few years. I think I've completely lost track of how many he's done. It's like 4 or 5, something like that. Anyway, yeah, so we will be doing scenario 1, which he calls chapter 1. Yeah, cool air. Basically for this, we only use stuff from the base Arkham game with an optional tweak. We're going to still be using some components from the other expansions. Wow. Forgot the word expansions. Mostly like monsters and investigators and that sort of thing. I don't actually have a whole lot of the expansions. I only have one big box expansion, Innsmouth, and the only thing from Innsmouth that we will be integrating into this are some of the Innsmouth monsters and the personal stories for each of the investigators. And I have 2 small box expansions, the Black Goat of the Woods and the Curse of Dark Pharaoh. We're not going to end up with anything from those expansions, I believe. So yeah, if we take a look at the scenario, get an idea, we are going to be fighting Ithaquah. We'll go over him later. We use all the base gates, or gates from the base game, but we take out a couple. I think there were still some Dreamlands and Relaya ones in there, but we've adjusted it to, make it slightly more Ithaquah friendly, I guess. You can use monsters from any and all expansions you've got, but you remove anything listed. So we removed a bunch from the Arkham. Black Goat of the Woods, you basically remove everything in this particular scenario. And we removed a bunch of the Dagon Shoggoth related stuff from Innsmouth Horror. We'll be using just the Mythos cards from the base game again, with a few removed. I think some of them are probably weather ones, because Ithaquah, we ignore weather. Also a few other things. Also, we've added 1 card from the Curse of the Dark Pharaoh gate deck. A horrible red-green dual colored one, which we'll see if we get it or not. Yes, use just the items, skills, and allies from the base set, again removing some of each, and then a list of the investigators that we are allowed to use. So I've just chosen randomly from all of those. Speaking of choosing randomly, let's go over everything. I've already done the vast majority of the setup. You don't need to see me just shuffle decks and randomly pick cards and cross my fingers. We did actually get very lucky on one tiny thing. Well, not so tiny. Anyway, we got lucky on one thing. You'll see it in a moment. First thing we're going to do is go over our great old one, Ithaca. Alright, there is Ithaca. Oh, chilly dude. Yes, well, we'll worry about all of these things in case, if we have to fight him. Fingers crossed that we don't. Anyhow, yeah, so things that affect the overall gameplay. His worshippers, Ithaca's worshippers, eat the flesh of their fellow men, gaining supernatural power through their practice. So cultists, when they come up, do have their toughness increased by 2. So they'll have a total of 3, unless something else affects it as well. Another ongoing effect is his icy winds. While Ithaca stirs in his slumber, any investigator in a street area at the end of the Mythos phase loses 1 stamina. It's damn cold out. In addition, all weather cards are discarded without their special effects taking place. I suspect all the weather cards have been taken out as part of the cool air scenario setup. So there is... Whoa, focus. Yeah, that is Ithaca. So we'll just quickly go over... Well, not so quickly. There's a lot to go over. We'll go over our randomly chosen investigators. Okay, our lead investigator to start with will be Michael McGlinn, the gangster. Before we go over his stats and abilities, let's find out his story. As a soldier in the O'Banion gang, Michael didn't really believe in all this voodoo mumbo-jumbo around town. Or at least, he didn't until the night of the foreman job and he saw fast Louis Farrell pulled screaming into the river by a scaly green creature. As they say, seeing is believing, and Michael is starting to believe. Now, he has gathered his belongings in the room that he rents at Ma's boarding house. Louis was a friend of his. And he won't rest until he finds out what's happening in this town and avenges his buddy. Michael has a chip on his shoulder about... Well, it's a legitimate chip. So see, he's got 3 sanity, 7 stamina. He will be starting at Ma's boarding house. His ability, strong body, any phase. Michael reduces all stamina losses he suffers by 1 to, obviously, a minimum of 0. So he's going to start off with $8. Here we go. And two fixed common items, the dynamite and the Tommy gun. Both favorites. Dynamite physical weapon gives you a +8 to a combat check, but you have to get rid of it. Boom. And multiple use is Tommy gun, also a physical weapon, gives him +6 to combat checks. He also gets a random unique item, and this is where I got astoundingly lucky. Yes, we picked up an Elder Sign. Yeah. So yes, any phase, when sealing a gate, basically you are guaranteed to seal the gate, but you have to lose a stamina and a sanity, and keep in mind his sanity is only 3. Blech. And this goes away. Goes out of the game. Can't be used again. Don't need to spend clues or anything, and we get to take a Doom token off the ancient one. He also got a random skill. Bravery. So in any phase, he can exhaust this to re-roll a horror check. And he gets a personal story. Is this your friend? The orderly pulled back the sheet. It wasn't a pretty sight. He was found in the water last night. We have no clue what these marks indicate. Don't you worry about that. I think I got a pretty good idea. Thanks, Rudy. I owe you, Mr. McGlinn. You know that. Yeah, I know that, Rudy. Thanks, anyway. So his story is for a friend. He passes if he has 5 or more monster trophies and gets to put this one's for Louis into play. But he fails if he manages to gain 5 or more dollars. And then crime doesn't pay goes into play. So I figure if he does acquire any money, not counting his original starting, of course, I'll just put it on there to keep track. So yeah, he wants to kill monsters to pay back for Louis. Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Skids O'Toole. So yes, we have a gangster and an ex-con. Wonderful bunch. Yep. So his story. Sure, Skids had knocked over a few banks before they'd caught him, but he'd never killed anyone. Scared someone? Intimidated someone into handing over his possessions? Yeah, okay, he'd done that. But he wasn't a bad person. He was just desperate. When he told the cops that he needed the money for an operation for his mother, they just laughed. Apparently they'd heard that excuse once or twice before. Except I think Skids is actually telling the truth. Oh, yeah. His mother died of her illness during the 2nd year of his sentence. After that, no one came to visit him. He managed to cling to his sanity by befriending his cellmate, a scrawny little guy named Brad Hollins. Brad was a weird guy. He would rant and rave in a quiet voice about every evening about the old ones and tell Skids about bizarre adventures he'd had while dreaming. Skids humored him until one night he'd woken up to hear Brad chanting strange words, still asleep. Smelling smoke, Skids turned to look at his cellmate just in time to see Brad scream and burst into flames. The screws had tried to pin it on him, but really there was no way they could get it to stick. Now finally out on parole, Skids finds himself staying in a place that Brad frequently mentioned in his ravings, the city of Arkham. Perhaps here he can find some answers to the questions raised by his friend's death. So Skids is also 3 sanity, 7 stamina. Abilities, School of Hard Knocks. So any phase, once per skill check, Skids may roll 2 bonus dice for each one he rolled. That could be very useful. He may do this either before or after spending clue tokens on the roll. Also, because of his criminal record, he cannot become Deputy of Arkham, nor may he gain a bank loan. Those are not terribly surprising. So his belongings are, he starts off with $5, 3 tokens. By default, he always gets the axe, physical weapon, +2 to combat checks, +3 instead if your other hand is empty. And then he got 2 random common items. He managed to get the rifle, very useful. That focusing, not focusing. There we go. Yeah, 2-handed, so you wouldn't be able to use this with the axe, but it is 5. Yeah, 5 to combat checks. He also got the map of Arkham, which during the movement phase he can exhaust to get 1 extra movement point. He also got a unique item, the Kabbalah of Sabbath. A tome. During movement, again, he can exhaust and spend 2 movement. Couldn't talk for a second. Movement points to make a lore -2 check, and if we pass, he draws a skill, and we discard this. If we fail the roll, it hangs around until so we can keep trying that until we get an extra skill. Speaking of skills, he did get 1 random one to begin with. Marksman. Any phase, exhaust to reroll a combat check. Seems to suit him. His personal story. Skids knew that he would have to search every nook and cranny of this city if he was going to find out what happened to Brad. Fortunately, since he was fresh out of jail, he had nothing but time on his hands. So yes, Skids is seeking answers. He will pass if, well, each time he gains a clue token, we will place a clue token from the supply on this card. Once 5 are on this card, we will play Disturbing News. He fails if there's fewer than 3 clue tokens on the board. So we want clues to... It's kind of a paradox. He has to pick up lots of clues, but we don't want to pick up too many, because then he'll fail. In which case, dried up will go into play. That's 2. Now we are on to our third investigator. Next up, we have Zoe Samaras. Samaras, the chef, who's a little bit nutty. Let's see her actual story. Zoe knew that she was special. She'd known it ever since God had spoken to her one night when she was 6 years old, the night that terrible fire took away her parents. He told her that he had chosen her from among all the people of the world to be his agent. She would protect the innocent and punish the wicked. Since then, he came to her in times of trouble, offering guidance and comfort. He has also come to lead her to an evildoer on several occasions. In each instance, with his aid, good triumphed. Then one day he spoke to her, telling her to come to Arkham, where she would face her greatest challenge yet. He had not spoken to her since. Yeah, she's not just after random bad people. We're after a god. Now, as Zoe steps off the train into the platform, she fingers are crossed, feeling the wrongness of this place in her bones. Perhaps if she cleanses the city of its taint, he will speak to her once again. Oh yes, I think I forgot to mention for Michael and Skids. They're actually both starting in Ma's boarding house. Chances are they know each other. All right. Right, Zoe also has 3 sanity and 7 stamina. We're not doing well on sanity, but that's what the random gods gave us. She has killer instincts. At any time, when Zoe makes a combat check against a monster or ancient one with physical and or magical resistance, we get to ignore it. And if they have magical and or physical immunity, it is downgraded to resistance. So she's a little better at hitting resilient things. She'll be starting in the train station. And her possessions, $2, 4 clues. By default, she always starts with her cross, magical weapon, which is 0 to combat checks, but +3 if it's something undead. And she always gets +1 to horror checks, which is handy. And she also, in her other hand, has her knife, which is just a straight +1 to combat checks. She also got 2 random unique items and a random skill. Her unique items that she grabbed: the Book of Diane, a tome. During movement, exhaust and spend 2 movement points to make a lore -1 check. If we pass, we draw a spell, lose the sanity, and put 1 stamina token from the bank on the book. If there are 2 stamina tokens on it, discard the book. Ah, I see. So, we can only use it twice. Which we may not do because she's going to lose sanity, and she's not very sane. A lot of our people are not do not have good grips on the world. She does have a healing stone, which is very nice. During upkeep, we can exhaust this to have her gain a stamina or a sanity. So maybe she will use this and have it come back. But we do have to just discard this if the Ancient One awakens, regardless of the Ancient One's rules. And her random skill, she got a +1 will. So when re-rolling because of a clue, we get to re-roll. We get to roll an extra die. Her personal story. As you have called me into service once again, my lord, so I shall serve. This city is thick and swollen with evil like a rotten fruit, but I will bring war to those who pervert the natural order and call upon false gods. Amen. Yeah, she's on a crusade. So she passes if she has 5 or more monster trophies, and we put a Grim Harvest into play. So she and Michael will be competing for monster trophies. But she fails if she is either arrested or has to discard her cross for whatever reason, and Forsaken goes into play. And that can't be good. It's never good being Forsaken. All right, on to our fourth and final investigator. Thank goodness, our fourth investigator is way more sane than the other three. But that's probably because it's Carolyn Fern, the psychologist. Carolyn is a first-year resident at a sanitarium in Providence. Over the past 6 months, she has been studying the dreams of her patients using hypnosis. One patient in particular gave her vivid and disturbing descriptions of his dreams, right up until he was murdered with a strange knife that closely resembled something from one of his nightmares. Ooh, mystery. Disturbed and frightened by his murder, Carolyn dug back through her notes, poring over them late into the night. Finally, she found some subtle clues that led her here to Arkham, where he was previously an inmate in Arkham Asylum. Someone here has to know why a harmless man was murdered for talking about his dreams to his psychologist. Yes, 6 sanity, thank goodness. Of course, she pays for it by having a lower stamina of 4. Psychology ability during upkeep. She may restore 1 sanity to herself or another character in the same location. Obviously, we can't raise higher than maximum sanity. So she's going to start in Arkham Asylum. Her stuff. Her fixed possessions are just $7 and 1 clue. Then she has a whole bunch of random stuff. She has 2 random unique items. She picked up the Holy Water, which is a magical weapon, +6 to combat check, discard after use. She's also got an enchanted knife, which will give her +3 to combat checks using magical. She also got 2 common items, which are also both for fighting. May have to trade these off with people. We'll see. She picked up an axe, so she and Skids both have an axe. Yes, because they're so much alike. She's also got the 0.18 Derringer, which gives a +2 to combat. And this cannot be lost or stolen unless we let it. So nobody can get at our Derringer. Her randomly chosen skill is +1 speed. So yes, when using a clue to add to a speed check, we get an extra die. And finally, her personal story. Carolyn Fern read over the frustratingly obtuse paperwork in her room. Getting records from Arkham Asylum had turned into a bureaucratic nightmare. It was going to take a hefty amount of bribery to grease the wheels. But even as she filled in all the blanks, she worried that she was too close to finding whatever it was that had killed her patient. It wasn't safe to be here. Final analysis. She passes if she is at Arkham during the upkeep and spends $15. So I think we'll probably be sending her up to the bank pretty darn quickly. She will fail if she has 6 or more clue tokens in her possession. We should be able to avoid doing that before we get her to the bank. All right, that is everybody. Now the last bit of setup that I'm going to do that I hadn't pre-done. We are going to resolve our first Mythos card. Okay, here we go. So first, the gate appears. There's one at Independence Square. So we choose the top gate from the pile, which is going to be another dimension, which is a nice easy one with a +0 modifier. It's going to go over here, Independence Square. That clue gets gobbled up. And then we get ourselves a monster out of the bag. It is a Migu. Now we're allowed 2, 4, 6. Yeah, we're allowed 7 monsters in Arkham before they spill over into the outskirts. So I'm just going to put all the monsters in a stand. I have 7 of them put aside, so it's easier to keep track of when we are over. And not sure is that actually showing up there. There we go. Way off to the side there. The board is big. A clue appears at the unnameable right here. Let's see. Movement. Oh, let's see. The Migu is a circle. And we do not have circle movement, so we can just ignore the rest of it. We have a headline. Strange tremors cease. All Chthonians and Doles in Arkham are returned to the cup. We have none. If at least one monster returns to the cup, raise the terror level by 1. Okay, well that could have been worse. Yeah, that was a very quick Mythos card. So, oh yes, of course, because the gate appeared, we will put 1 Doom token on Ithaca. We're up to 1. Already counting down. All right. So, we'll get into properly next episode. Hope you'll join me. Thanks very much, everybody, for watching. Thanks for subscribing to the channel and liking my videos, both on YouTube and Board Game Geek. It's very much appreciated. And I will see you next time when we properly start yet another board game playthrough. So long.